New York City at the legendary Blue Note.
This the people party.
Live from the Blue Note. Live from the Blue Note. Live from the Blue Note. Live from the Blue Note.
Live from the Blue Note. Come on.
Peace and love, party people. This is the BKMC, the MCEO, Talib Kweli. You are now in tune with the world's best podcast, The People's Party, and we're going to have a good time. I'm feeling good because I'm at home. I'm in New York City. This is the foundation of the whole culture. This is my home. This is where hip-hop started, and I'm at the legendary Blue Note because I got a bunch of shows, so I figured, hey, I'll kill two birds with one stone. Let's film People's Party here, and I could bring some guests that I haven't been able to get on People's Party in Los Angeles. Shout out to Jasmine Lee out there in Los Angeles. And right now we are at the legendary Blue Note Jazz Club. This club has been around since 1981. When I used to hang out in the Washington Square Park in Greenwich Village, I used to wish that I could come and take dates to this club. And now I'm a featured performer at this club. It has venues from Japan to Italy. Of course, here in New York City, the original, Hawaii, China, Brazil. I performed at most of these places. People like Dizzy Gillespie, Sarah Vaughan, Lionel Hampton, Carmen McRae, Oscar Peterson, MJQ, the Modern Jazz Quartet. Ray Charles used to perform here. So we are very honored to be here at the Blue Note. And of course, there's the Blue Note Jazz Festival with Robert Glasper last year. It had Black Star on it, Dave Chappelle. We're going to do the Blue Note Jazz Festival again this year. On the Midnight Miracle, my other podcast on Luminary, which is where the People's Party can also be heard. Midnight Miracle is Dave Chappelle, myself, and Yassine Bey. I want to shout out Midnight Miracle. I want to shout out Luminary. I want to shout out everybody who's been supporting this podcast. And today's episode is very special for me because we're not just going to talk about New York City, but we're going to talk about Brooklyn, New York City. And we're going to talk about one of the best artists to come out of Brooklyn, New York City, one of the architects of this culture that we call hip-hop. Our guest today is hands down one of the most influential lyricists and artists and producers in the history of hip-hop. You can hear his lyrical DNA on so many artists, from Nas to Capadonna to Eminem to myself. Hailing from Brooklyn, New York, Brownsville, Brooklyn, this rapper and producer gained acclaim on the 1988 Great Year in Hip-Hop Juice Crew posse cut, the Symphony. It has influenced so many generations of MCs. He's been described by music journalists as like one of the purest New York MCs of all time, and I co-sign that. Legends from Rakim to KRS-One to Big Daddy Kane to Slick Rick to Cool G Rap. This is the class of MC that he's in. He's given us an amazing run of albums from Take a Look Around to Slaughterhouse Sitting on Chrome, Disposable Arts, Long Hot Summer, Son of Yvonne, The Fallen Season, The Show, The Running Point EP, Tonight Show with EMC, Arts and Entertainment with Ed O.G. and Brooklyn Story from Marco Polo. This guy works very well with these Boston cats, it seems. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we do it from the Brooklyn side. Give it up for the music man, Master Ace, and the place to be.
Yeah.
What up? Peace, Ace.
What's going on?
Thank you for doing this. It's my honor and my pleasure to sit with an MC of your caliber, brother.
Absolutely. I'm going to get comfortable if that's okay.
Yeah, please do. Please do. My team has never seen the New York version of me. They never seen how I carry myself in New York.
Is it a different demeanor when you out here?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you would know. You spend time in both coasts.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that. Once you hear the capital A rap, it'll stay with you for a while and won't go away. I can't tell you how much that particular rhyme pattern shaped and influenced me as an MC. I want to talk more about the Symphony later, but just that bar is kind of like, when I talk about your style being in the DNA of what I do in so many MCs, it was the structure of that particular bar and things you were doing at that time.
Okay.
That made me think, I didn't think you could do that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Listen, I felt the same way the first time I heard Rakim, because at that time, most rappers in their verses or in their bars, the last word in the line rhymed.
Yeah.
There was no internal rhymes really. That hadn't become really a thing yet. And Rakim was the first person in my eyes that did it, and it opened my mind up. I was like, oh, so you don't have to just rhyme just the last word. It can be more rhymes in there. And, and I just started playing around with it.
Yeah, and it's like now you got people doing doubles and triples and all that. But, you know, back then, if you weren't there to know, like I said, it wasn't like that. There were certain cats, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, certain cats that was doing it. And then you got guys like you coming up under them. And then I talked to Finesse about this too, because I feel like Finesse and what he was doing with AG and them, they were doing that Uptown.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, people, I don't think, give them enough credit as well.
Absolutely. Me and Finesse go way back to his, when he first started, and that first New Music Seminar battle, we were both in it at the same time, and he ended up getting to the final.
Right.
But yeah, we became friends from that day.
Right.
That had to be, what, 87 or something like that? In Seminar?
Yeah. Now, one of my best hip-hop memories ever, and I got my man Seth Bird in the house, he's from Brooklyn as well.
Word.
He was on stage for this as well. It was the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival. And I was performing. And I was like, yo, if I perform at Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival, and if I can do it, I got to bring out the Crooklyn All-Star. I got to bring out the original lineup, the Special Ed, the Master Ace, and the Buckshot.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for coming through.
No, thanks for asking me. That was a great day. It was an awesome day. The weather was perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was just a perfect day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that? You was on stage too much.
Listen, I had a mic. I don't know who gave you the mic.
Yeah, I was like, how you even get a mic? You don't even got a verse.
I was part of the show. So.
Word.
Now, that Crooklyn song is such a, like, you know, I DJ sometimes now, and I still play that song a lot. It has such an impact when it came out. It really, to me, elevated what people thought hip-hop could be.
Right.
The way that y'all combined forces, Q-Tip on the beat. And I've heard that the original version was just y'all just rhyming, and then Spike Lee had to sit y'all down and show y'all a screening of the movie.
That's true.
And tell me about this.
Yeah, so there's a version of that song with different rhymes that I have somewhere on a cassette in some random bin or bag somewhere in my garage but anyway, when Spike heard it, he's like, you know, this is cool, but it doesn't really embody what the movie is about. So I'm gonna have a screening. This was like months before the movie hit the theaters, and we were in a small room that maybe sat about 30 people or something like that, and we sat there, watched the whole movie, and he's like, now you see it takes place in the 70s, like I need y'all to channel the 70s somehow, like so we were like, okay, and we went back and everybody rewrote their verses, and that's the result of, you know, the song you get to hear. But it was Spike really just pushing the button to say, this is cool, but y'all need to...
It's like he directed the song.
He really did. You know how it is. You other MCs, you trying to just go in, like just talk about how dope you are. So that's what we all did.
Feels so good to be a Brooklyn bomber. The references that y'all had on that was just like, for kids who grew up in Brooklyn in the 70s, it was like... And the movie Crooklyn, I mean, so you got to see it before it came out. That movie, you know, I know a little bit about your life from your records, but I know for my life, that movie felt like a documentary.
Right, the brownstones, the whole essence of Bed-Stuy and what that felt like it was familiar. I didn't grow up in a brownstone. I grew up in projects, but that brownstone in that movie, it felt familiar to me for whatever reason. Probably visiting family members, whatever, but it was familiar.
Word up. Now, you grew up in Brownsville.
Yeah.
D-Ski.
D-Ski.
DJ D.
Yeah.
D-Ski, all these names. 260 Stone Ave, apartment 7B.
Yeah.
I know this because of your records. You tell everybody everything in your records.
Yeah.
Listening to the world-famous Supreme Team show, going to park jams.
That's a fact.
Now, what sort of effect did growing up in this sort of New York City rudiments of hip-hop stew have on you creatively?
It had a huge impact on me because I was literally growing up as hip-hop was growing up. And I got to watch the evolution of DJing into rhyming, into making tapes, into doing routines, into, you know, taking popular jingles and turning them into rap verses. Like, I got to witness all of it and attempt all of it as it was happening. I was also writing graph. I was also, you know, electric boogie breaking or whatever in the neighborhood. And this was all through high school. So for younger people, hip hop is just here. It's just already here. But to be there while it's being developed, while it's happening, and not even realizing what you're witnessing, it had a huge impact on me. And obviously I carried that with me for the rest of my career.
No doubt. You ever still DJ at this point?
Nah, I don't. My boy Steady Pace, my first original DJ, he still got a little set in the basement. So I'll go to his crib and be like, let me put I Can't Stop on. Let me try to play around with it. But you know, I still kind of know my way around it, but I don't have the skill that I used to have, you know. But it's just fun to do anyway.
Shout out to Steady Pace.
Word.
It's original Action Posse.
Yep.
Shout out to Mike Waller too. Mike Walker. Mike Walker. He gets a shout out on the Fallen Season album, right?
That's my high school quarterback.
That's your high school quarterback. Okay.
Yeah.
Sheepshead Bay.
Yep.
So now this album is interesting to me because I don't know how it is in other cities, but the whole going to high school grind from junior high school to high school in this city is a big deal.
People don't realize.
It's like a whole cultural shift and a whole paradigm shift and a whole shift in your world. Like I remember, shout out to Stacey Cox because I thanked her on the Black Star album because I was going to Summit 113 and she went to Brooklyn Tech and she was a year older than me and that was my girl. And she broke up with me because she's like, I'm in high school now.
Right.
I can't be.
Can't mess with you.
Nah, I shot her out because she was honest about it.
Word.
Because it's a real thing. And you on this album, you talk about, you're like, I was 10 points shy going to Brooklyn Tech.
My mother wanted me to go to Tech without a doubt. And she's like, listen, you got a high enough score to where if you just do the summer school program, you get through that, you'll be going to Tech.
Right.
In September. And so I was going to summer school. At the same time, she was in Atlanta scouting out a new job opportunity. And it looked like she was going to get this job and we were going to be moving to Atlanta. And so once I heard that I'm not going to school in Brooklyn, I kind of slacked off. I wasn't really even,
That's deep.
Algebra. I was like, I'm
going to school in Atlanta.
Yeah. What's the point? I'm not going to Tech. So I kind of slacked off and ended up not passing the summer school, only to find out she didn't get the job. Now you're going to school in Brooklyn, but where are you going? And at that time, back in, this was a 79, 80, they would give you a sheet in junior high school. And it was like 10 slots on there, and you would just kind of rank or write down school choices other than your zone schools. Because my zone school was Thomas Jefferson, and my mother was like, you're not going there. There's no possible way. No way.
Right.
And so my mindset was, well, wherever I go, they got to have a football team. Because I was planning on playing high school football. So I just wrote down all the high schools in Brooklyn that I knew had football teams from just talking to people. And Sheepshead Bay was one of the 10 schools that I listed. I don't remember what the ones before it were, but the first few were, I couldn't get into those schools because they were full. Sheepshead Bay came up. They had a vacancy, and I went to Sheepshead.
Yo, this is a serious, stressful, anxiety situation for 13, 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so I followed my girl to Brooklyn Tech. The score was 432 you had to get. I think I got a 435.
Wow.
I got into Tech. I didn't get my girl back, but I did get into Brooklyn Tech. My brother got into all the, my brother, Jamal Green, he got into, my brother's like super genius. He worked he's super genius. He got into all the schools. He went to Hunter College High School.
Okay.
But Sheepshead Bay was close to where I was at because at that time I was in a two-fare zone of on Avenue K and East 48th Street. So I could essentially not walk, but I could essentially with a quick bike ride to Sheepshead Bay and, fighting with them Italians out there.
No, it was serious, man.
And Steve, I don't know if you know about New York Italians.
The stories were crazy. Like I'm walking into that situation already hearing all of these stories about baseball bats, kids getting chased to the bus stop, getting beat up, hitting the head with bats and all this.
Shout out to the B44 line.
Man. So I was walking into that school not really knowing what to expect and definitely being on guard. I joined the football team like literally the first day I got there. And once I was on the team, it became a completely different, because that became like your family, your gang. Nobody would mess with you. Half the team was Italian and Jewish, but they were connected to all the white boy thugs that was chasing people. That was they homeboys.
Right.
So, they would always say, yeah, the guys on the team, don't mess with them. Don't mess with them. So I never had an issue.
Yeah, man. People don't know about that deep in Brooklyn life. Shout out to Droog, who sound great on that 3000 Avenue X.
Man, yeah.
And Torre, the battle in the high schools. I remember that whole energy.
Yeah.
And then football, like football's been a theme for you. You redid Common's Used to Love Her with your version of it, but with the football theme. Yeah. And then you also coach football?
I did. Years later, so I started coaching at Canarsie High School.
Okay.
In 2002.
That's dope, bro.
And I coached there for 9 years.
That's super dope.
And then I coached 2 years in Jersey as well, but at Irvington, which is Queen Latifah's alma mater. So 9 years in Brooklyn and 2 years in Jersey, 11 years high school football coaching. I wouldn't trade those years for anything. Those relationships I have with those young men still exist. Those guys are 30 and 32 with families now. It's crazy.
Right. And they like, yo, Master Ace was my coach. That's crazy.
And none of them knew at the time when I coached.
Right, because they young.
And I didn't make my my association with the music business, I didn't make it known because they were all playing hip hop, and half of them wanted to rap, and so I didn't want no players coming up to me trying to, how this sound? Like, I didn't want to deal with none of that. I didn't want to deal with none of that.
Right.
So I was very strict about that. Like, I had a couple players that heard about me, and then they were kind of like hush hush about it. Like, one kid came up to me with his headphones. Coach, how this sound? He like, listen to the song, and it was my song. I'm like, I said, it sound all right, and I just gave it back to him.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't even acknowledge it. He just smiled and walked off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Scooter Rockwell. I feel like I know you.
Oh man.
For real, because all these names that come up in your music.
Oh man, Scooter, rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace. 1987. He suggested you do this rap contest, right?
It was actually it was earlier than that. It was actually 85 going into 86.
Okay.
Yep.
And the prize for the contest was 6 hours with Marley Marl.
Yeah, first prize. Second prize was $500, which was a little bit more interesting to me because I was in college. I was a broke kid, student, so I was looking for that $500 really.
Right, right. I feel you. And you said 86, so it's Marley Marl's fresh new on the scene, so it's not like the legend as he is now.
Well, let's see. The Bridge was out.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure the Bridge was out. 85, 86. Yeah.
He's on the radio.
He's on the radio. The Dimples D record was out. He had done a couple of joints. Yeah, he was known.
This reminds me of now, there's this thing going on with, shout out to the Earn Your Leisure dudes, because they went viral talking about this situation, and I might be messing some of the details up, but would you rather have a dinner with Jay-Z or take a certain amount of money? And people were, weighing in on what they rather do, but this sounds like a similar situation.
It is. There was no way in my mind that I was going to win first prize. The day that I went there was 30 other artists, rappers performing. So I was like, second prize, if I can get that, that'd be dope. I spit a rhyme that was very much patterned after Lottie Dottie, Slick Rick's Lottie Dottie, about a girl that I met. It was like a kind of a sexcapade kind of story with a bunch of different punchlines about me and the girl. And on the way to the contest, I'm on the F train, programming my boy Scooter's Dr. Rhythm so that the beat will drop out on the perfect lines. And I literally programmed the drums on the way to the contest.
Wow.
And it worked out perfectly. I said all the lines, and when I hit those punchlines, the crowd,
right.
And the reason I stood out is because up to that point, everybody that got up there, almost 75% of the people were rapping over "It's Yours," Tila Rock, "It's Yours." They were just rhyming over that beat. I come with a drum programmed beat where it drops out and story, like everybody was just spitting this lyrics, and I come with this whole story thing, and it won them over.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
Now we had Big Daddy Kane on this show, which was an honor for me, obviously being a Brooklyn MC. He told us the story of how he used to call you Glasses,
which I never knew until literally like maybe 5 years ago. I never knew that. I never knew that.
So that was just him and G-Rap thing.
Yeah.
Now, he gave us his perspective on how the symphony came together. And I'd like to get your perspective.
Okay.
I heard you were Craig G's ride to the studio.
That's all I was.
Okay.
And so that day, if you look on the back of Marley in Control, you see us all standing by the airplane. That was the day that the symphony was recorded.
Okay.
So when I overheard that they were going to Marley's crib to do one more song, I had just met Kane that day for the first time. I was already a fan, and I really just wanted to hear what he was going to say. His album wasn't even out yet, and I just wanted to hear these rhymes. I know this is going to be dope. It's going to be crazy. So I'm really just tagging along, being nosy. Just want to hear the song, hear the rhymes. So I was like, I'll take you over there, Craig. So we drove over to Marley's crib, and I'm literally just sitting, watching them write and listen to the beat. It never entered my mind, I wish I could get on this. That wasn't even a thought.
Right.
When the time came for somebody to go in the booth, everybody was passing the buck. Kane's like, yo, let G-Rap go first. G-Rap, let Craig go first. And they doing all of that. So that's why on the song, Marley says, I don't care who first or who last, because that was literally happening right before we recorded the joint. So he just looked over at me. He's like, yo, Ace, you got something for this? You got a little couple of bars? Just warm the mic up. These guys acting scared. I'm like, all right. Yeah, I got something. I just went in there and spit one of my memorized. I walked around with 10 to 12 memorized verses because
heaters.
At any point you could get into a battle in New York City back in those days. So I was always I was always prepared.
I could rhyme too.
Yeah. So I was always prepared. So I just spit one of those memorized joints. So I didn't find out till years later that when Marley sent me in the booth to rhyme, that Kane and G-Rap were basically talking like, "Yo, we out of here." Like, who this new dude? He's throwing glasses on the song. Who's this guy? So they had a whole plan. Like, we're gonna act like we're going to the pizza shop. We're just gonna go home, and that's gonna be that. But before they left, they heard my first take. They were like, "Yo, glasses is kind of alright. Glasses kind of alright. All right." And that's how I ended up on the song, man. It wasn't supposed to be. It was just supposed to be me warming up the mic so that they could go in and do their thing. And he kept me on the record.
A classic was born.
Yeah.
So 1988, this is the year that you graduated from University of Rhode Island. So your life is beginning. To me, this is the best year of hip hop.
I agree.
So I'm going to list the albums. I just Googled it real quick.
It's a lot.
So that In Control comes out 88 or 89?
88.
So 88, the Symphony comes out. Straight Outta Compton. Long Live the Kane, Strictly Business, EPMD, By All Means Necessary, Boogie Down Productions, Critical Beatdown, Ultramagnetic, Takes a Nation $1 Million to Hold Us Back, Public Enemy, Great Adventures of Slick Rick, Follow the Leader, Eric B. and Rakim, Straight Out the Jungle, Jungle Brothers, Light as a Rock, MC Light, Going Off, Rest in Peace, Bismarcky, In Full Gear, Stetsasonic, He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper, Fresh Prince, Jazzy Jeff, Power, Ice-T, Tougher Than Leather, Run DMC, Easy Does It, Easy E, Life is Too Short, Born to Be Wild, MC Shan, Act a Fool, King T, Salt with a Deadly Pepper, Salt and Pepper, Girls I Got 'Em Locked, Super Lover C, Casanova Rud, Too Hype, Kid and Play, Let's Get It Started, MC Hammer. I mean, I could go on and on and on.
Yep.
That's crazy.
That's the foundation of the best hip hop that's ever created. Just that 1 year.
That year was crazy.
What do you think it is about that year to have everybody dropping just like that amount of heat?
The stars and the moons aligned, and everybody was in the studio that year just cranking out joints. Like, I don't know what happened, but for those many impactful albums to drop in the same year is just like unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I guess all things are not meant to be understood at this point in time.
Listen, I'm glad that I was at least in close proximity to those releases.
Now, you started touring a little bit, doing a little shows here and there. The Juice Crew thing pops off. And the impact of the Juice Crew is just so iconic. But you were doing like cold chilling shows, right?
Yeah, they did a 91, right after my album came out. They did a promo, kind of a promo tour with all cold chilling artists. But this was like the second wave of cold chilling, though. This was after they signed Kid Capri, they had IU, they had
Rest in Peace.
GZA. Rest in peace. Yep. They had GZA, they had Diamond Shell.
Diamond Shell. That record got taken off the shelves, right? Because of that sample issue.
Yeah. They had a few, but there was so yeah, we did a run. We did two tour buses. It was me, G-Rap. Biz was on some of the dates. Kane wasn't on it, but it was IU. IU had the biggest record at that time. Something New was on the radio all over the U.S. And Kid Capri, The Genius. And we just two tour buses. We went around. We went
to Dirty, right?
Old Dirty was supposed to be on the tour. He was scheduled to be just as hype man, but on the very first show, which was in Jersey at down in South Jersey, Highland, what's it called? I can't even think of the name of that town right now. He got up there and showed his ass and cursed out the whole crowd. And I was supposed to go on next, so I'm like, why would he piss the crowd off? He cursed the whole crowd out, and dudes got mad and throwing stuff. But you know, eventually Genius got on and calmed it down. But that day, Fly Ty was like, he's off the tour. Your man can't go. I mean, your man can't go. And so he didn't make it onto that tour. But that was a good time. It was a good little run that we did. I got to see some places I'd never been before. New Orleans. We were in a couple of southern states, which our records weren't really ringing yet. So it was a good experience. That's my first time on a tour bus.
Right. Now, you were in this path to be this more college 9-to-5 person, and your mother worked very hard to make sure you had a good education, go to college. And now you're talking about hip hop. And I heard that you got kicked out the crib right before your first album. You
know, like you said, I graduated in '88. I got the degree, marketing degree. And all I'm doing is going back and forth to Marley's crib recording records. And my mom's just like, what's going on with the resume? Why aren't you doing any job interviews? Like, you should be out there, like, come on. Like, we did all of this for nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I got this thing kind of happening. It's about to happen. And the reason that I got kicked out was because she would leave me notes, lists of things to do while she was at work.
My mom used to do the same shit.
Because the idea of having a grown son, 20, 21, 22, just sleeping until 11, you know.
I used to argue with my moms about this. I'm like, yo, why do I have to get up? For what?
Right. This is, yeah, so.
She'd come in and wake me up. Just because you up, I got to be up?
Right. So this particular day, she would leave the list on the refrigerator. Get the clothes out the cleaners, you know, clean the bathrooms, wash the dishes. It would be a list of stuff. This particular day, I had somewhere to be. I didn't even go in the kitchen. So I literally took my shower, got dressed, went out the door. Came back later, she was pissed off because the list wasn't touched. I didn't do anything on the list. And the next day, it was a note on the refrigerator, I want you out by your birthday.
Wow.
But I was right at the cusp of the album, you know, coming out. So it was but it was a huge moment for me because it made me grow up. It made me grow up. I got my advance within like months of my birthday and got my own apartment and was out on my own, and I've been on my own ever since.
Word up. Now this is Take a Look Around. The title track is inspired by Gil Scott-Heron, rest in peace. Revolution will not be televised. I feel like it was kind of revolutionary for you to do that more spoken word style of that song. On that. I got to also, that's like conscious spoken word. You're dealing with knowledge of self. That was very inspirational to me at that time. Of course, I got a record called Knowledge of Self. So anytime someone would say that in a record, before I did my record, I consider that the blueprint of what I was doing. The other side of town, also, what you was dealing with on that record was super inspirational for me. In your mind, like, what does that project mean to you now? Take a look around.
For me, it was the learning. It was me learning what it was to be an artist. Because Marley really was the one driving the car. I was just a passenger. You know, he was the one who decided, you know, which verses we were going to use and, you know, what the hook was going to be. It was like a boot camp for me. I would just pay attention. I asked a million questions. How you get that bass like that? Like where's that sound come from? And how do you do that? And why did you turn that knob? So that album was my boot camp. That was training camp, if you will, for me learning the process, because right after that album, I was literally on my own and had to figure everything else out. But I paid attention, asked enough questions that I could at least create the next album without Marley.
Right. Now, Me and the Biz is one of the best conceptual songs I ever heard. And you are known for making sure that your bars ain't empty. There are no wasted bars. Everything is a concept. Everything is a piece of the whole.
Right.
It's not just songs for the sake of making songs. It's like, what are we out here doing?
Right.
And the story of Me and the Biz is that you wrote this trying to get him on the track, and for whatever reason, you couldn't get him on the track. Me being a young dude at that time, my ears weren't sophisticated enough to understand, like, and I'm on the outside. So I'm just thinking, of course, everybody know each other. Right. Of course, Master Ace, he's in the Juice Crew. He's not gonna have no issue getting the biz. I remember first hearing the song before seeing the video and before reading about what happened, thinking that was the Biz.
A lot of people did. To this day, there's still people that think that.
I think it's Biz Markie on that record. Like, that was a real thing. I remember being like, oh, wait, that's Master Ace?
I didn't know to the video.
The video was important. Right, it was like a paper mache Biz. Was that what that was?
Yeah.
Puppet.
Paper mache though.
Yeah.
Very creative.
Biz had bars. I just want y'all to know.
Yeah, Biz had bars on that song.
And that song, Biz had bars.
Yeah, Biz did his thing on
that. Was the other thing too. You hear like, yo, Biz is getting
busy, right?
Yeah.
No doubt. Rest in peace to the diabolical Biz Markie. Yes, indeed. Now, me and my friends, we loved Cheap Ass Nigga. Like that era of the jazzy bass lines with the hard drums. When that came in, that shit was just like,
that was it.
Yo, and then we was trying to be scientifical, which is not actually a word.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. But that's what we considered ourselves. Like, we lyrical, mystical, scientifical. You're like Brainiac, Dumb Dumb, Buster, scientifical. The remix Born to Roll, as you know, I repurposed it from my record Upper Echelon.
Yeah.
And I come out with that bar, like Brainiac, Dumb Dumb. Like, what was it about Jeep culture at that time? Why was the Jeeps and making sure and and you had the Jeeps, and whether it was a Cherokee or a Suzuki Amigo or whatever it was at the time, Geo Trackers, whatever. Like, what was it about the Jeeps and the beats at that time that was so intriguing?
One of my close high school friends, another high school teammate, my man Lou, he used to put systems in cars. He had a garage in Bed-Stuy and his aunt's garage, and he put my first system in my Chevy Blazer. I had an 84 Chevy Blazer. He put two 15s and two 12s in there. He built me this big box, and I had it in the back. And so around that same time, I'm working with Marley. Marley's working on the Mama Said Knock You Out album for LL. I hear Booming System, and I'm like, I need a copy of that because I want to test it out in my truck. Right. And when I heard the low end on it, I was just like, this is what it's about. Because at that time, you in your 20s, you driving around New York City trying to get girls. That's all you're trying to do. The louder your music was, the more likely girls would look, maybe come over, talk to you. That was, you know, part of your swag was the sound system to get girls. I was hugely influenced by A Tribe Called Quest. The bass line was definitely a Tribe influenced, and then
coming down the block, man, loud as fuck.
And the bottom, the bass was influenced heavily by the LL Mama Said Knock You Out record. And then I went to LA in 1990 for the first time. I'd never been to LA before, and I got to see this whole other world, this car culture scene. The cruising scene, I never seen that before. Like, so there was like certain days of the week. I think Sunday was one of the days where everybody would flock to this area with their cars and their systems and their rims and just cruise up and down this little area. And I'd never seen that before. I was just like blown away. Like, this is great. Like, this is me. I want to be a part of this. And so I started collecting, you know, auto books and rim books. And I probably had 1,000 car magazines. Like, I was just into it. So it made sense for me to be doing records like that because it was what I was actually into.
It came off as real authentic too. And it feel like someone trying to capitalize on the system. I was like, yo, this guy really likes Jeeps.
Yeah.
He's a Jeep ass nigga for real.
Yeah. I should also credit Sir Mix-a-Lot because rolling with my posse definitely played a role in me making that record too.
Word up.
That's my posse's on Broadway. My bad.
Yeah, my posse's on Broadway. Now, Eminem, one of the best MCs, most famous, most well-known, he has talked about spending a whole summer listening to the Slaughterhouse album.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting because you can clearly, if you're a rap fan, you can clearly hear your influence on Eminem, cadence, metaphor-wise, flow-wise, a lot more than a lot of MCs. How does that make you feel?
It's absolutely an honor. To me, I don't hear myself in him because the stuff that he was doing, he was on another stratosphere with the wordplay and you know, people say they hear similarities. I'm like, man, I wasn't rhyming like that. Like, I wasn't rhyming like that. That's another level. So the respect goes both ways. You know, the first time I met him, he told me that when Slaughterhouse came out, he was broke. He was hanging out with his boys, D12, and they would just drive around Detroit playing the yellow tape, the Slaughterhouse joint. And he said that they would just play it, it would pop, they would buy another one. And I was like, wow, I would have never thought that. I would have never in a million years thought that. So it was an honor. It's definitely an honor.
I remember at that time, you know, your crew, ISC crew, and Live from New York, a Saturday night and all that was like the hardest shit on the street. So it makes sense to me that that's what D12 and Eminem was listening to at the time.
Yeah, those guys, I got to meet, you know, them at a party, and you know, we chopped it up, and then I met M separately at a show, and it was just all love and mutual respect on both sides.
Yes, indeed. Now you talked about the LA scene, and obviously that car culture, and as well as what Dr. Dre was doing with the Chronic, was inspirational to the Sitting on Chrome project.
Absolutely.
You know, INC Ride took off with the Ozzy Brothers sample. That shit was everywhere. It was ubiquitous. Shout out to the Cellar Dwellers. Word. You know what I'm saying? Word is bond. Because those were my guys. Like, those are Lyricist Lounge days. Those were the Cellar Dwellers and Bushwhackers and that kind of, those crews of MCs were like the guys that I knew when I was around as I was starting.
Right.
So to see, I remember hearing Cellar Dwellers from where I'm from Flatbush area, be on your record, made me feel like I could do this too.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know these guys. I see these guys around. They on a record with Master Ace. Now, after sitting on Chrome, you were accused of selling out to the West Coast.
Yeah.
By large people in the culture.
A lot of backlash.
A lot of backlash. Yeah. And I've heard you call it the compromise album for Delicious Vinyl.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like that?
I do. Because truly, that album wouldn't have been made. Well, it would have been made, but it wouldn't have sounded the way it sounded if not for the direct influence of the label saying, give us this and we'll go somewhere with it. So they asked me for a specific thing. They're like, listen, Born to Roll is huge. If you can just do a whole album, car culture album, like it's gonna be out of here. And I said, okay. Like I never chase stuff. I don't like, as an artist, I never chase success. I just retool and come up with the next creative thing. But they wanted me to chase the success of Born to Roll, and so I compromised. I said, all right, I'm gonna do this. But y'all better do y'all thing. Y'all made Tone Loc platinum. Y'all made Young MC platinum. Y'all better do what y'all did. You know, a lot of things happened to cause that record to not be what it could have been. And it was a lot of, I would say, within the label, a lot of administrative mistakes were made. That
been there.
Yeah. And so, you know, I still have a little bit of a, you know, bad taste in my mouth about that project because I gave them what they asked for. It should have been what it should have been, but so many things happened with distribution and mistakes, and ball gotten dropped here and there, and next thing we know, it's like, all right, I'm out of here.
Well, I hear you, but as a fan, I feel like that album, it ages well because I hear what you're saying, and I do hear those efforts on the album, but I think we were so entrenched in keeping it real and so entrenched about the culture that the compromises you made don't necessarily feel like compromises when listening to it in this era. It just feels like a sign of the times. Because like I said, you just explained how deep you were in the car culture. So none of it came off as inauthentic or unauthentic. And it came off as organic. And you had the whole storyline with my cousin from LA. So it's like you were really trying to put the context
I was.
On it. But I think it still sounds like an East Coast album to me with sensibilities.
Yeah, my goal was to try to make a record that I could still stand behind and feel good about. But was still going to give them what they were asking for. So I tried to do both. I tried to do both.
Yeah, and that attempt to try to do both, I think that's what's leaving a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
The idea that you even had to compromise at all with your art.
Exactly.
Which I think throughout the rest of your career, you figured out, I'm not going to do that no more.
I'm doing what I want to do, and that's it.
And I know that your situation on Big Beat had to do with that.
A lot to do with that.
Can you break that down?
Yeah, well, I did a whole entire album after my Delicious Vinyl deal. Big Beat picked me up. They signed me. And I worked on a record for 2 years. I had about, I don't know, 14, 15 songs recorded. We dropped a couple of white label joints. And first they said, I went to the label, I played Craig Kalman, I played them the records that I had. They're like, yeah, it's cool, but, you know, you got to remember, this is the Bad Boy era. Bad Boy was killing it, this late 90s. Bad Boy's killing it with all of these R&B kind of laden tracks. And a lot of singing was on the hooks and all of that, and they were like, you know, why don't you do a record with Changing Faces or you know,
Changing Faces would have got you rotation.
Yeah, that's what they were suggesting, and so
I can see it now.
So they asked me to go back and to do a couple of records like that, you know, and I went back to the studio and I struggled with it, and I was like, I can't do this, and I did some more records that I thought would at least be kind of in that vein, but I didn't put the singing on them. Brought them back, and they were just like, "This isn't working. We're gonna drop the record. We're gonna drop it." And right in that moment, I was like, "Oh, so you can work on a record for 2 years, and the label just go, nah, we're not gonna put this out." And that changed everything for me. I was like, from this point forward, I'm doing what I want to do. Period. Point blank.
Yeah, and that's not just industry-wise that I feel like you were making these decisions, because around 2000, you were diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, and you waited till 2013 to share it publicly. So it's a large chunk of time where you were just working and grinding and dealing with this, and people didn't even know. So what were the symptoms and what made you decide to keep it close to the vest as opposed to sharing it at that time?
Like around 99, take showers and I would just like lose feeling in my whole right arm. Like I couldn't even lift it. I thought I had a pinched nerve because I was in the gym a little bit working out and stuff like that. So I thought I had a pinched nerve or whatever. So, you know, I didn't think nothing of it. And then a particular day, I remember I lost vision in one of my eyes. And I went to a doctor and they treated me for optic neuritis. And they were like, you know, eventually your vision will come back or whatever. And then after that happened, I had another incident. This is all like leading up to 2000. The bottom of one of my feet just went completely numb. Like how, you know, if your foot falls asleep, it felt like that. But it felt like that all day. And then the next day, that foot was better, and it was in the other foot. And so I was like, I go to the doctor. Something is weird, like something going on. So I went to the doctor and went to Brookdale Hospital, and they ran a battery of tests. They kept me overnight, I think. Pretty sure I stayed overnight. They were running a bunch of different tests, but they weren't telling me what they were thinking it was looking like because they didn't want to say anything yet. And then they did a spinal tap. That was the final test. And once they came back and told me what it was, and I was just like, well, I guess this is a wrap. I guess it's over. And, you know, I thought it was a wrap. I really did. I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that there was no cure. And I knew that my quality of life going forward was probably going to be horrible. And I was in a lot of trouble. And so to my wife's credit, like she had like the crazy pep talk, like just took me out of that funk right away. Like, this ain't nothing. Like, we're going to get through this, blah, blah, blah. She just hit me with the crazy pep talk and got me at least in the right mindset to try to fight. At that point, I just started making a lot of changes with my diet and my exercise and things like that. But in addition to that, I rededicated myself to the pen, to the music, and to putting together at least one more record because I really thought this is gonna be my last go. So I'm gonna just do this one more record so that I can kind of go out on my terms because I felt like the Sitting on Chrome album was if I'd ended on that, it was me going out on somebody else's terms. So I'm gonna go out on my terms. I'm gonna do this one last record and then let the chips fall where they may. And that was Disposable Arts, which ended up being the most important album of my career.
Yeah, Disposable Arts is a really, really important album, not just for your career, but for hip hop. For me in that era, I'm starting out in the park rhyming, doing singles with Raucus, doing things with Fat Beats. And I want to thank you for what you did around that era because you were somebody we looked at as you on TV. You were on the Symphony. You did Sitting on Chrome. You did Born to Roll. And here you are putting out your records in the store with us. Here you are at the open mics with us. Like Master Ace was one of us. And it gave us all inspiration. I got my man Power in the house. That's your people's too. Absolutely. We used to call him Baby Power back in the day. I don't know if they still call him Baby Power. You know what I'm saying?
Grown now.
He grown. That's grown Power now. But even like Power, like you used to give me inspiration too because how long we known each other, bro?
Oh, don't say the age because I got my whites right now growing.
But you still got the afro. And this guy used to be like, if you came from the outer boroughs or if you came from uptown or whatever, we used to meet in the park at these little hip hop events. And you knew you was at the right event if you saw that afro.
Yeah.
If you saw that afro in the crowd, you're like, oh, Power's here. And it became something that was bigger than hip hop. It became like, if you saw an afro in a movie, it was Power.
Yep.
Right.
The other day I was watching Panther on TV. There go Power in the back. Because he had the afro. It looked like, okay, he looked like he's definitely a Black Panther.
Right.
He had the sunglasses on, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, we had, yesterday Perry from Lyricist Lounge came here and he told a funny story about how he went running with you and Power. And he also talked about seeing Destroy. Destroy was trying to run with y'all. He said he got lost uptown. Yeah. But if you follow Power on Instagram, he does a lot of activism. I'm telling the audience, there's a lot of activism, a lot of groundwork, social justice activism, intersectionality work, and connecting it all to exercise and running and everything. So when I heard Perry talking about, I ran with Master 5K with Master Ace of Power, I was thinking, I wonder if they linked up on the health and wellness tip. Yeah. Because I see y'all roll together.
But we originally linked up because I was doing a tour through Canada. And we didn't have anybody to drive. And we needed somebody that was reliable, that didn't drink and smoke, you know, because I don't play around when it comes to being in those vans on those icy roads and all that going through Canada. I need somebody that I can trust and rely on. So,
not to mention customs. I got a nemesis there.
Yeah.
Canadian customs.
All of that. So, you know, Wordsworth was actually the one who recommended. How about Power?
This was an EMC situation.
This was an EMC tour, and Words is the one who recommended. How about Power? And I was like, yeah, all right, I'm with that. So we talked about it, and he came on the road with us as the tour driver.
I'm surprised he ain't run to the show.
No.
He drove that tour, and his spirit was great. He brought a lot of energy, a lot of laughs, a lot of fun, the healthy eating thing. And so I was like, I'm gonna keep this guy around, man, because he brings. I need somebody that's more like minded, because everybody else just ate what they want, they drank, they smoked, whatever they was doing, And I needed somebody that was more in line with my thinking, and Power was that guy.
EMC is a dope situation. There's like 3 EMC albums, right?
There's an EP, two albums and an EP.
Right, it's Wordsworth, Punchline, and Strickland
on the first one, and myself on the first one.
Yeah, those are this is. Again, it made me feel like you're one of us because, as you know, Words and Punch were on the Black Star album, doing a lot of things. So I felt like, you and I didn't really know you at that time,
right?
But I was at a distance. I'm like, yo, Master Ace is one of us. But speaking of Disposable Art, speaking of touring, you also spoken on touring in the UK at first in 2000, 2001, and how that inspired Disposable Arts.
It was actually it was in 2000. I went out to the UK. I was already at that kind of point where, in my mind, it was kind of a rap. I hadn't been diagnosed yet, but I felt like it was a rap. I felt like nobody cared. Nobody wanted to hear another record from me. And I actually started shopping beats. Like I made a resume. I was going to different labels trying to get a job.
And you learned how to make beats from Premiere, right?
He taught me how to use the setup.
Okay.
He taught me how to make it go from a record to this disc. But he's like, listen, I ain't going to tell you what to sample and what to chop and how to do it, but this is how you get the sounds from the record to this, to this, to this. He gave me all the steps. I wrote them all down. I still have the paper the day he gave me all of my lessons. And I went home, and that day I started making beats. But I forgot what I was talking about.
Oh, my bad. The touring in the UK.
Oh, yeah. So 2000, there was one more little tour. They put together a little 13-city tour throughout England. And I went out there not really expecting much. Just like, okay, we're going to do these shows, but I'm at the end of my road. I get out there, and the clubs are packed with people. The people know my songs. And
now, for context, we're talking 20 plus years ago.
20
you were
plus
like,
years ago.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think 2 of the shows were in Germany, but most of the dates were in the UK. And when I came back from that tour, I was energized. I was like, yo, there's people out there that still mess with me like that. So I'm going to do one more record. I'm going to do one more record. And that was Disposable Arts.
A shout out to Greg Nice. He sounds great on that record.
Man.
Alphabet Soup, high concept record. He coming with the concepts. The IDA school was dope. Studying fake niggonometry, I thought was hilarious. Paul from Saskatchewan, he actually had bars. You wrote those bars, right?
No.
So who wrote those bars?
His name is Paul Barman. He's a rapper.
Oh, that's Paul Barman.
Yeah.
Oh, I know who Paul Barman is. I didn't realize that was an actual Paul Barman. Yeah. So those were his bars.
Those are his bars.
I was like, yo, Paul got bars.
Jumping Jehoshaphat and something that goes with that.
Yeah, that shit.
I'm more funky than a 4-year-old yoga mat.
Yeah, right. This is dope. Shout out to Paul Barman.
Yep.
Take a Walk was accurate. Because look, the whole gypsy cab situation in New York City, like a real New Yorker knows, like you get to a certain age, and you be like, oh, I'm sick of this bus train shit. And I got $5 in my pocket. Shout out to my son who was on this show. And he went to jail for a couple years.
Yeah.
But that was based on him arguing one of them drivers over that, nah, it's $5, no, it's $10. Like the dude yesterday only charged me $5, them arguments with the gypsy cabs. Yeah. So you shouted out like Black Pearl and White Top.
Yeah.
And I just want to shout out all the New York City gypsy cab companies from Black Pearl to White Top, to Evelyn, Arecibo, to Tel Aviv, to Carmel.
I'm not Evelyn.
Rainbow.
Wow, I still know some of them numbers.
Before Uber, you had to have all them numbers in your head. Yeah. And remember, Tel Aviv number used to be 7777777. And Carmel was 666-6666. I still remember Evelyn, even though I ain't used them in years, is 718-230-7800.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arecibo. Nah,
don't do it. Don't.
But this paints an accurate picture of Brooklyn, so I want to thank you.
Yeah, man, thank you.
On this record. Unfriendly Game of Baseball. Of course, we talked about the football thing. That's also on that record. Now, Dear Diary. This record is unflinchingly honest. And it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like all great art is supposed to be uncomfortable. It makes me think of the way you're talking to yourself. It's like there's this voice downing yourself, like Two-Face in Batman. Two-Face, the other dude, is like, no, you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. what made you want to be that honest about your battles and your tribulations you were going through at that time?
Like I told you, I felt confidently that this was going to be my last record. I was confident that I was done. And so I wanted to just lay it all out on the table and speak, let the people know what I was thinking, or let people know that I know what they're thinking. I'm going to say everything that people are saying behind my back. I'm going to say it out right on the record. So that was what that record was. It was just me just being honest with myself and letting people know that I know what you're saying. I know your opinion of me, and I'm just going to lay it all out there on this record.
Right. And you talked about this battle with this dude, Boogeyman. You say your best written shit and school them like they care. That was the most important bar of that song for me. And that bar, to me, sort of talks about the evolution of where battle rap was going. Right. Because there was a time when battle rap was just like you freestyling. Right, you just, And then it got to the point where it is now where you get a whole couple of months to study your opponent.
To prepare and memorize and the whole 9 yards.
What do you think about the evolution of how that's gone?
I love it. I feel like I had reached out to Smack a few years ago because I had an idea on how to make the format better. I like what they've done, and I love these battle rappers. It's super entertaining. I just felt like there was a way to format it better so that it wasn't just about the crowd or...
Like I said, the crowd yelling over...
Basically, the victories are based on a general consensus of who you think won, right? And so I thought they could have used boxing as a way to structure it better so that there were actual judges with scorecards and
a level of expertise and a little bit of gatekeeping. Not in a negative sense, but a little bit of making it to where its expertise is valued. Correct. As opposed to the mob rule.
Right, exactly. And so, because some of those really close battles, people debating about who won, this person won, that person won. Whereas if you have, a foundation where there's judges that are part of it, I thought it could have been just a little bit more structured. That's all. Yeah. But I still like it. I mean, I didn't like the audio part. Just too many people on stage, too noisy. But those are just like little things that I wanted to try to bring to it. But we never had the meeting. So I was on tour at the time. I'm hitting them from Europe. Like, yo, I think you should do this.
Right. Now another person that we have in common that we've worked with a lot is Jean Grae. Yeah. And shout out to the wonderful Jean Grae, one of the best MCs to ever do it. Your work on Kung Fao was funny to me. You have a couple records with her, but the Soda and Soap record, was that a record originally for Will Smith?
It was.
It was.
I wrote it for him around the time he was working on the Millennium album. That was one of the records I recorded at Touch of Jazz with Darren Henson, one of Jazzy Jeff's producers from the Touch of Jazz team. And we recorded a couple of joints, and that was one of the joints that we recorded for Will. He wound up not choosing the song, and I'm like, well, I'm not letting this go to waste. I'm gonna use it for something.
Break down the concept for the people who don't know the song.
So it's called Soda and Soap because the first verse I'm using different brands of soda, and using them in a creative way to tell a story. If you're not paying attention, you may miss most of the sodas that I mentioned, but if you're paying attention, you'll catch them. The second verse, I use all soap brands, soap and detergent and, anything that makes suds. I basically, so the first verse was a story using all sodas. The second verse was a story using all soaps. And Jean Grae did the hook on it.
That's a good crew, that Touch of Jazz crew.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Shout out to Jazzy Jeff.
Absolutely. Soda Soap was produced by DJ Spinner, too.
Okay, shout out to Spinner.
Yeah.
Another Brooklyn dude. Now, speaking of Brooklyn dudes, you did this record called Brooklyn Story with not a Brooklyn dude, but Marco Polo. And shout out to Marco Polo. And there's a lot of skits and conceptual stuff on your albums. But on this album, he took the lead on the skits. And the skits seem to be more about his coming to Brooklyn.
Yeah, that was a decision that I made. I told so much of my story. Like I felt like it was time to tell his. And he was blown away that I even decided to do that. Because rappers, they always want to make it about themselves. But I was like, nah, this is way more interesting. And I want to say he probably is a Brooklyn dude now because he's been living in Brooklyn as long as he's been living in Brooklyn over 20 years.
I feel like if you've done, and I'm being gracious and generous here, but I feel like, especially in the age of gentrification, but I feel like if you've done a year in Brooklyn, you have earned the right to, if you're at a party somewhere and they say it's Brooklyn in the house, you can be like, yes. You got to put 1 year.
One?
Except for Steve.
He's being nice.
Hold on. I was about to say yes.
No, but I'm saying that because I'm a power and numbers guy.
Yeah.
Hey, man, if you spend a year in Brooklyn as part of your story, you one of us. That's how I feel.
And he's 20 plus.
Yeah.
In the borough.
Yes, indeed.
But yeah, so I just wanted to tell his story. He was going through a lot. His father was ill at the time, and there was just a lot going on. It was a very emotional time period for him, and I was like, well, I want to make this about you. And it was super important to have his father on the skits, you know.
It's beautiful.
I'm glad we were able to more realize him on the album.
Yes.
His voice.
Yes, and I could tell that they're doing scripted lines, but these scripted lines are coming from real life.
Yeah.
And the things that his mother said at the end was so beautiful because it kind of ties it all together. And it's like, there's a lot of hip hop stories like that.
Yeah.
Of people who like, damn, I didn't know what this was. But now that I'm seeing what you're doing, it's beautiful. And that's dope. I think that's my favorite album by you.
Thank you.
It feels fresh, it feels timeless, but it also feels classic at the same time.
Thank you.
Now, can you break down, first of all, rest in peace to MF Doom.
Word.
Break down the origin story of Son Yvonne and those Doom beats, those special herb beats, and why you think casual fans may not see Doom as a producer, even though he put in a lot of work on the production tip.
A lot of work. So, friend of mine, Roman Oben, ex-NFL player, played for the Giants and a bunch of other teams. He's a super hip-hop head. And I was riding with him in the car one day and he was playing Special Herbs, but I wasn't familiar with it. I was like, what's these beats? Because it just sounded like maybe somebody produced some joints. And I was like, what's this beats? He's like, oh, this is MF Doom, Special Herbs, da-da-da. I was like, oh, shoot. I said, all right, I mess with these. He's like, yo, if you want, I'll get you a copy. I was like, please, yeah, definitely. So he wound up dubbing that, I think it was a CD, and gave me a copy of it. And so for the next 6 months to a year, because I never listened to the radio. I hate commercial radio, so I never turned that on. I would either listen to sports radio or I'll put on the Doom beats. And I'm just driving around listening to Doom beats, and I started getting ideas for lyrics. Like songs started coming to me. I wasn't planning on this, but just driving around with beats, that's what happens. And
that's what happens, yeah.
Rhymes start coming to me. I'm like, oh, I could say this to this beat, right, to this beat, da-da-da. So I just started kind of like loosely, jotting some things down on my phone or whatever. And then we had a meeting with Fat Beats coming up, and I was mentioning to them, yo, I think I'm gonna do a mixtape over some Doom beats I had got. And they were like, mixtape? Yeah, I'm just gonna throw it out there, just a little something in between projects, a little free joint. Oh, no, we can't put that out for free. We'll do a deal. And they wound up offering me basically an album deal for the record that I was gonna just throw out there for free. And wound up being over these Doom beats. Now, Doom at the time, I think I mentioned it on Twitter or one of the social media platforms. He got word through that. I never actually spoken to him about it or anything. And we ended up meeting each other at the Montreux Jazz Festival in, I can't remember if it's France or...
Is it Switzerland?
Switzerland. It's like right at the border. It's either Switzerland or France. It's right at the borderline.
I saw Steely Dan perform their last show there a few years back.
Okay. So they had... I think Mos was supposed to headline and then had to pull out at the last minute.
I think I was around for that.
Yeah, and he couldn't do it, and so they booked Doom and me to fill in for Mos. And so when I got out there, I saw him say, yo, man, I got this album. Yeah, I heard about it. I said, well, I would love for you to hear the record. So after the show, went to his hotel room, sat down, me, him, Big Ben. Marco was with me. And I played him all the records that I had recorded over his beats. And he was like, yo, this is dope.
That's crazy. That's what his verse is about. Because he mentions Marco in that verse.
Yep, we were all there. And so after that, I said, yo, I would love you to be on, I got like one more joint, if you could be on this last joint. He's like, I got you. Months later, got the verse, and like the son of Yvonne was born.
Yeah, and he's rapping about loving your moms.
Because he heard the whole record leading up to it.
It's really beautiful because it really is. Because I'm listening to your music to refresh myself for this interview. And there was a moment yesterday where when I do these shows, you can ask my team, I don't take no phone calls because in order for me to give the interview I want to give, especially for people like yourself who I want to give these flowers to, I got to be locked in.
Right.
No distractions. But then that Doom bar popped in my head. And I'm like, I got to pick up from Ma Dukes.
Yeah.
And I picked up and she was talking about something I didn't feel like hearing. You know what I'm saying? She was. But it was so important for me because not everybody got their moms.
That's right.
And what my moms did for me is so important that and we need these reminders in our art.
Yeah.
Because the art is here to make us better.
That's right.
And so thank y'all for making that album.
Thank you.
And that beat for that song, for the title track, that's one of hip-hop's best beats. When at the end of the day, because they used that for that record with the King Ghidra record with Star and Lil Psy.
A bunch of people.
Yeah, a bunch of people rapped on that. That's one of the best hip-hop beats ever made. I love how you talk about the Jolly Ranchers and had pork in it because that was a real street conversation in Brooklyn back in the day. Yeah. Don't use Aquafresh. Don't eat Jolly Ranchers. They got the dyes in them and all that. You got Kane on that record with Doom. That's beautiful.
That was just, listen,
full circle moment.
I didn't know if I would ever do another record with Kane, and I was surprised he said yeah. I was like, dope.
Yeah, he's premier MC. Now I want to talk a little bit. We are in the jazz club right now, and you have this record, Home in America, with the analog players. You tackle the multi-generational impact of systemic racism in America, from white slave owners to reparations to Proud Boys to insurrectionists. You say you will always be a threat when you're black with brains. Let's unpack why you made that record.
Well, my guy Ben reached out to me, asked me, to lend some vocals to one of his tracks. He sent me a few tracks. He's like, pick one and just do a song. Because it was basically an instrumental jazz album. And so I was like, okay. So I listened to the beat and I got an idea for, it was kind of like an ex-girl type song. I laid the first verse down, I sent it to him. He's like, nah, this is dope, but, I was really thinking, you would do something a little bit more, in line with what's kind of going on in the world, something a little bit more in line with social consciousness or whatever. And I was like, oh, you should have said that.
Right. I got that in my bag all day.
He left it wide open, here, do a song to it. And so I was like,
you took him to the jazz club.
So I went back into it and I rewrote this joint, the Home in America joint. And it was just, with everything that was going on at that time, it's 2020, we're watching a lot of things happening right before our eyes. And I felt like the reason I didn't do the second album with Marco during that time is because I felt like the whole album would have been like that. And I didn't want to make these worldly problems that I'm struggling with, I didn't want the album to be consumed with that. And so this was a perfect outlet for me. This is a side project. This is a side song that has nothing to do with my projects, that I can really get these thoughts out of my head. I need to say these things. I can't say them on my records necessarily, but I can say them on this record.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that were building up in me that I was wanting to say on this new record with me and Marco, I decided I'm gonna put some of it on here. So it was kind of an outlet for me. I was glad that I got the opportunity to do that on that song.
It was dope. I think your verses on that song was real dope. And
thank you.
And just like I said, it's never an empty bar. Your bars are so packed and so filled that your albums are like plays, which is interesting because you've been working on a hip hop musical.
I have.
That's based on these 3 albums: The Disposable Arts, Long Hot Summer, and Fall of Season.
I have been.
What's the status of that musical? That
musical is it's written. I'm still whittling it down. I actually did a lot of whittling. Our first table read was back in 2020, and I was at 145 pages, and they were like, this is way too long. It has to be around 100 pages is what you want for a 2-hour musical. And so for the next 3 years, I was whittling and shaping the story, and I got it. I'm down to 110 pages, which is, they said that's acceptable. That's going to be fine. And now I'm working on the music part. But we actually we had 2 more table reads since 2020. And now we are building up for the next really big table read, which is going to be actually casted with actors that can rap and act, and it's going to be in front of investors. It's going to be a pretty big deal. So shout out to my guy Patrick Blake from Rhymes Over Beats. That's the hip hop theater company that's backing me and that's going to be producing this musical. But yeah, we're at the phase of doing the music part of it, so it's pretty incredible.
That's really exciting news, and that's a win for hip hop. I'm someone who unabashedly is a fan of musical theater. Like, I've seen all the big plays, and I go to all the plays. And Black Thought is one of the best MCs, if not, heralded as like one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely.
And he was absolutely influenced by me and the Biz, because he's played me records. And a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, this was the same studio session. He played me records with him featuring 10 MCs.
I've heard him impersonate a few people.
Yes, and it's Black Thought with 10 MCs, but it's all Black Thought. He did this with Kane and G-Rap on that Roots record a few years back. And he actually had them come and perform at the block party with Dave Chappelle. He had them come perform the verses that he wrote for them. So they had to learn the verses that he wrote.
Wow.
Which is crazy. But Black Thought, I bring him up because he's got this play that he wrote, Black No More. And he had Lin-Manuel involved, and he played me. I know that a play got cast and they did it downtown. They did a. I didn't get to see it, but I love the fact that we're in this space, and I love the fact he played me his musical with him doing all the parts. It was like Rodgers and Hammerstein style. Like, it's not just bars. There's some bars in there, but it's also some big, huge musical set pieces. So I love that we're in this space, and I appreciate that you are expanding where your pen could take us.
Absolutely.
Finally, what's next for Masta Ace on the music tip? You mentioned Brooklyn Story Part 2, but what else is it?
Well, we're not calling it Part 2, but yeah, we got the next album. Me and Marco, it's done. We're mixing it, right? We're already mixing it. I still got to put the skits together and everything like that, but the songs are pretty much done. I'm leaving for tour in 14 days. I'm going to Europe again for another run right before the album drops. And this musical, and in the spring we'll be having that read. I mean, it won't be open to the public yet, obviously, but it'll be open to certain key figures. Like we'll invite people like yourself down to check it out and get feedback.
I'd love to,
just to get feedback, And yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about that. My daughter's getting ready to go to college. So
congrats on that.
A lot of big changes happening around the household. And that's it, man. The musical, the album, the tour, the next tour. That's pretty much it right now.
That's dope. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the Music Man, People's Party, proud to have Masta Ace. Thank you for coming through.